Welcome to the Godot BootCamp lesson on implementing external authentication. External authentication is used to allow your game or app to authenticate a user with an external platform that brainCloud does not support. In the previous lesson, we did a high-level overview of external authentication with brainCloud. If you haven't watched that lesson yet, it's highly recommended that you watch that lesson first. To authenticate with an external platform, we need to use the authenticate external request. This request depends on a Cloud Code script being implemented on the brainCloud design portal. When making the authenticate external request, we need to supply the following parameters. The user's credentials for the external platform, but these credentials don't necessarily have to be the platform's email and password. In this lesson, the external platform is Twitch, which uses OAuth 2.0. As a result, we'll be sending along the user's email address and an access token as the platform credentials. The next parameter is the external auth name. This is linked to the Cloud Code script that we are going to write. The last parameter is force create. This will create a new brainCloud profile if one does not already exist. Clicking the JSON response, you'll see that this looks exactly like the response that we would expect to get from any of the authentication requests. Now let's head over to the Twitch developer portal and set up our Twitch app. Notice that we already have a Twitch account created and a couple apps. We need to create an app for the Godot BootCamp. However, you may need to pause this video to create a Twitch developer account. Click the Register Your Application button. Set the app's name. This name will be displayed to the user when authorizing your app. Set the OAuth redirect URL. This URL must match the URL that we send as part of the OAuth request. If it doesn't match, then the OAuth process will fail. Set the app's category to game integration. Keep the client type as confidential. Click and answer the I'm not a robot CAPTCHA. Click Create. The Twitch app has now been created. For the Godot Twitch app that we just created, click Manage. From this page, we can get the client ID and generate a client secret. Before we do that, let's head into the Godot editor. Run the game. From the main menu, click brainCloud, then click Logout. Click Login. This is the dialog that we set up 2 lessons ago. We are going to change it so that we have a button to log in with Twitch instead. Stop the game and then open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the dialogmanager.cs file. In the ready method, comment out the statement that instantiates the anonymous email login dialog. Then uncomment the statement below that instantiates the Twitch email login dialog. Save the file and then return to the Godot editor. Run the game. Notice that the login dialog now has a Twitch button. Stop the game and then return to Visual Studio Code and navigate to the twitchhelper.cs file. The Twitch Helper class was written to streamline this lesson and simplify the OAuth process. As we look over the script, I'll highlight and explain key sections of the code. The Twitch Helper's constructor initializes the Twitch client ID, client secret, and redirect URL. The next method that I want to highlight is called Start Local Callback Server. It will start the local server and listen on port 3030 for the Twitch response. When it receives a response from Twitch, the callback HTTP request method will be invoked. One important detail to note is the synchronization context that we are creating in this method. brainCloud needs to be invoked from the main thread, and the callback HTTP request method will be in a different thread. The synchronization context will ensure we're able to invoke the authorization callback delegates from the main thread. The last method that I want to highlight is called callback HTTP request. It's invoked when the user authorizes or denies our app from accessing their Twitch account information. In the highlighted section, we check to see if the authorization token was returned. If it was, we send it to Twitch asking for an access token. In the highlighted section, we check to see if we have an access token. If we do, then we validate it with Twitch, and then, on a successful validation, we'd request the user's data from Twitch passing along the access token. On a successful request, we then invoke the authorization granted callback delegate from the synchronization context. In the event that the user did not grant us access to their Twitch information, we'll invoke the authorization denied callback delegate from within the synchronization context. Open your web browser and navigate to the brainCloud design portal. We're going to set up the Twitch authentication script. On the left, click Design, then Cloud Code, followed by Web Services. Before we can make a request to a web service from a Cloud Code script, it needs to be whitelisted first. Click New Web Service. Enter a service code name and the base URL. The service code name is what we're going to reference in the Cloud Code script. Click Save. On the left, click Scripts. Click the full screen button. Then to create a new script, click the plus button. Give the script a name. Ensure that client callable is not selected. Delete the initial parameters. Then enter parameters for the external ID and the authentication token. The default value for each of these will be an empty string. Click Create. Delete the default script. Get the input data that's passed in by the authenticate external request. The user's email address that's associated with their Twitch account is the data object's external ID, and the Twitch access token is the data object's authentication token. Next, we need to get the HTTP client proxy from the bridge. The bridge provides a mechanism to access all of brainCloud services within a Cloud Code script. Using the HTTP client proxy, we'll validate the access token with Twitch. If the access token is valid, then this script will return true, which means that our authentication with Twitch was successful. Click Save. Click the full screen button to exit full screen. On the left, click Authentication, followed by External. On the right, click the plus button. Give the external identity a name, then select the cloud code script that we just wrote from the drop-down list. Click the checkmark. The external identity name is what we're going to pass in when we're making the Authenticate external request. We're all done in the brainCloud design portal. Open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the constants.cs file. We have a few constants to add. Declare a constant for the external identity name that we just created on the brainCloud design portal. Then declare constants for the Twitch auth URL, the client ID, client secret, and the redirect URL. Open your web browser and navigate to the Twitch developer portal. Copy the Twitch client ID and then return to Visual Studio Code and paste in the client ID. Back in the web browser, click New Secret. A dialog will ask you if you want to generate a new secret. The dialog will ask you if you want to generate a new secret. If you do, then the previous client secret will be invalid, which may be something that you want to do if your client secret gets exposed. But since we've never created a client secret before, click OK. I've blurred out the client secret as it's against the Twitch terms of service to share an app's client secret. Copy the client secret and then return to Visual Studio Code and paste in the client secret. Save the file and then navigate to the network.cs file. Declare a trio of private member variables. The first member variable is the Twitch helper, and the other two member variables are the authentication callback delegates. Scroll all the way to the bottom of the file. Declare a private method called onTwitchAuthenticationGranted. This method will be invoked if the user grants our app access to their Twitch user information. In the body of the method, declare success callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, invoke the handle authentication success method, pass in the response data and the authentication request completed delegate as the arguments. Then, if the username parameter is different than the username member variable, invoke the update username method, pass in the username parameter as the argument. Declare failure callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, invoke the handle authentication error method, pass in the reason code, the JSON error, and the authentication request failed delegate as the arguments. Make the Authenticate external brainCloud request. Pass in the user's email address, the access token, the Twitch external identity constant, true to create an account if one doesn't already exist, and the success and failure callback lambdas as the arguments. Below this method, declare a private method called onTwitchAuthenticationError. This method will be invoked if an error occurs during the OAuth process. In the body of the method, format an error message. Then invoke the handle request error method, pass in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Below this method, declare a private method called onTwitchAuthenticationDenied. This method will be invoked if the user denies our app access to their Twitch user information. In the body of the method, format an error message. Then invoke the handle request error method, pass in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Scroll up and find the authentication email password method. Below it, declare a public method called request Twitch authentication. In the body, check to see if the Twitch helper has been instantiated. If it hasn't been instantiated yet, instantiate it, passing in the Twitch client ID, the Twitch client secret, and the redirect URL as the arguments. Then assign the authentication callback delegate parameters to the authentication callback delegate member variables. Declare an array of strings named scopes. This will represent the information that we are requesting from the Twitch user to give our app access to. In this lesson, we are only requesting access to the user's email address. But in your game or app, you may need to request additional scopes of data from the user. Consult with Twitch's developer API for additional scopes. Generate a unique state value. This unique value will be echoed back in the response, and we'll use it to validate that the response came from Twitch. Format the parameters for the OAuth request. The parameters data will include the Twitch client ID, the redirect URL, the auth state, the response type that we're expecting back, and the scopes that we are requesting. Invoke the Twitch helper's start local callback server method, passing in the auth state, the on-Twitch authentication granted, the on-Twitch authentication error, and the on-Twitch authentication denied methods as the argument. Format the URL to include the Twitch auth URL constant and the parameters that we just set up. Try to open the device's web browser at the URL. If an exception occurs, stop the local callback server. Then format an error message and invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the email login dialog method. Scroll down and find the on Twitch button clicked method. Delete the to do comment. In its place, hide the dialog, show the connecting dialog, and then invoke the network's request Twitch authentication method, passing in the authentication callback delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiles successfully, open the Godot editor. Run the game. Click the Twitch button. This should open the web browser and display the OAuth screen to the user. The name of our app that we set up on the Twitch developer portal is displayed along with the scopes that our app has requested. In this case, it's just the user's email address. Click Authorize and then head back into the Godot game. Back in Godot, the game has received a response, got the access token, and then used it to get the user's email address. The email address and the access token were then sent to brainCloud as part of the external authentication request. The Cloud Code script then validated the access token, and as a result, we are officially authenticated with Twitch. Let's confirm this on the brainCloud design portal. Open your web browser and navigate to the brainCloud design portal. At the top, click User, then click the top user in the list. On the right, click Go to User. Notice that Twitch authentication is listed in the credentials section with an external type. Cloud Code Scripting Basics is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.